Greetings! It is I, Countess Naravan Dracovin, Lord and Emperor of the Dracovin Empire, and welcome! It is time to continue our discussion on D20 Modern, the modern take on the 3rd edition of Dungeons & Dragons. Where we last left off, we started talking about game mastering. Let's dive more into this, with more things that you as a game master will need to know. Know the material. Now this can take a couple different forms. First off, if you're bringing people to a certain place that you've never visited before, a desert for example, know a little bit more about deserts that might help you reflect the actual region you're in. You're going to want to know any kind of maps, any kind of layouts, kind of encounters they're going to have. You're going to want to try to predict how your characters are going to act. You should know a little bit about them to have a couple of ideas about how they might be doing things within the world. Prepping all these different materials that you're going to know them very well. Different things. If you're prepping a game that's a published module, then read through it. Know basically what's in the book. On the other hand, if you're making it yourself, then you're going to have to prep it appropriately with all the relevant information that you can sort of predict that you're going to need. That's where a lot of these kind of planning out what your characters are going to do comes around. Now, this doesn't mean you can't improvise or wing it. Winging it is an important skill. It's just that you have to do what you feel comfortable with. If you're the kind of game master who thinks you can wing things very easily, improvise sessions, improvise decisions, encounters, things like that, if your characters make decisions that were unexpected, you can respond to them very well, then do it. If you're not, come up with contingencies, plan it out more, prepare for it, come up with a couple alternate things just in case they take a left field you weren't expecting, something that you can bring in to affect things at that point in time. It's going to be a balance between these two things that's important to you as a game master. Whether your prep level or your wing it level, kind of finding out what's good for you. Now you're going to want to know the rules. This doesn't mean memorizing the rules. This means you should have at least read through the rules. Because if something comes up, you should be either able to, first off, be able to basically say what the rule is, tell it out, take care of it, not have to worry about it. Or you should be able to reference where it is quickly and efficiently if you absolutely need to. You should have an idea about most of the obscure rules that are in there. Basically either A, where to find them, or B, how they work. The second one, the how they work, is probably the better one. But we're not saying memorize everything in the book. We're saying, like, if you're getting into a session where vehicle combat's going to come up, be ready that you know most of the vehicle combat rules and you don't really have to reference anything. That you're ready to snap into it, take care of it, you don't have to worry. Now it's important that whatever attitude or that you're establishing in the game, the way that you're running the game, take it as serious or as comedical as you want, but think of it this way. Your players are going to reflect however you're acting. So if you act serious, your players will hopefully reciprocate this and act serious too. That's the point of it, is the way that you're drawing them into the game. Use the various actions and plans and attitudes that you do to draw them in that way. Encourage them to take notes too, because notes might be important on the various things they're learning. You should also take notes to reflect this, that the various actions, again, that you're doing should reflect upon your players, too. Now, in retrospect to the notes, we bring in the next part, the recap. The important point of why you and your players might be taking notes, more than anything, is, of course, recapping the last adventure. This is the way to bring your characters back into the action where they left off. Traditionally, you're just going to basically state out all what happened in the last session to basically get everybody set up in the mood about what's going on, where they left off, where they're ready for things. You might want to have one of your players do the recap because this helps get them into it and get the other players into it. And it reflects good note-taking too, which is something important that players should be able to do. Again, it's the similar thing of this note-taking that you and your players are going to have. Now, a good description is going to be as important to this game as a mood. Your descriptions of an area will effectively answer a lot of your players' questions right away. It should establish kind of both some important things and unimportant things. Tend them towards areas where they can ask the correct questions and set things up. You don't want it to be quite obvious, though. You don't want to have it just all the things that you need to ask questions on. Add details that you find are important that don't make it feel like an actual world. That's the important part of it. It's going to feel like an actual world. You're going to, within your description, give clues to whatever's going on in the world that they might want to look into. But again, you're not going to keep it so obvious that they're going to go right there. And then, of course, that makes the descriptions boring if they're like, oh, that's what it is, I can predict it. You want to add some things in to make it, flesh it out, make it feel like, just like the mood's establishing everything, this is establishing the location that they're in. Don't be afraid to add in minor details, which mean nothing to him, but it just adds that essence to the game. Now, try to avoid looking up the rules as much as possible. We've already familiarized ourselves with the rules. If it comes to the point in time where you might necessarily have to look it up, if it's something that you know just a little bit, improvise. Do something, just put up something together that keeps the game flowing and going. That's the point of it, is you want to keep it going. Effectively, you're building the rules a little bit as to what you felt like you read through. You're not just throwing something together. You're saying, oh, what did I read? Okay, this is how it really should work. This is what I do. If it's correct, great. If it's not, you kept the game going. You didn't slow it down. If it's absolutely something you have to look it up, don't not look it up. Just look to an opportunity that's appropriate to looking it up and then do so. You're not going to want to just dive into those rules because, again, it does sort of create a stopping point in the action that slows things down. So don't be afraid to ask your players questions. These shouldn't really be leading questions because that might lead them on a path that you want them to go on. The questions to the point of them are if your players are basically struggling, if there's a point in time where it looks like things need to be sped up a little bit in the plot, in the storyline, you ask them these questions. Like, if there's a downtime and people are doing stuff and it feels like things are kind of breaking apart, you ask the question of, like, do we want to just move on ahead? Do you have anything else you want to do? Things like that that make people give an answer. If no one else has anything they want to do, hey, I can skip ahead to the next part. You see why the point of asking questions is. This also gets you more information. If you ask players questions on various things about what they're planning out and some of their goals that are currently going on, you can taper the next session or the next encounters to appropriately reflect what kind of goals they have. You can make it feel more personalized for all the characters in the group. You see how questions can be very important to you asking them to your players. It's also important to take breaks during long sessions. A session that is hours upon hours, people are going to want to take a break. First off, get a drink, maybe get a snack, maybe go to the bathroom. These are important things. Also consider that these breaks might give people time to basically process what's been going on, think a little bit about it, and come back with a freshened mind. Breaks can be useful that way. Now, you're the final arbiter, the final decider in everything. Any kind of decision you make, the players should respect completely and utterly. This isn't to say that you're going to do things with dice rolls. I would suggest dice rolling, which is an important way of arbitrating things, try to keep them secret as necessary. You're going to want players not to know what's going on. It gives them an air of mystery, so they don't know if they were successful or unsuccessful at avoiding detection about that guy around the corner. You rolled it. Maybe you heard them, maybe they didn't. They're not going to see that directly by seeing your dice roll. This is the point of it, that you can make judgments here appropriately. You're not going to let players on too much about what's going on. Now, if you're having the players roll a die roll that has some kind of difficulty or something, don't bother telling them what it is. You don't tell them the AC of the you don't tell them the defense of the thing they're fighting against. You don't tell them what their save DC is, what their skill DCs are. You let them roll and then you tell them the results. The point of this is that they don't have the numbers side of it ingrained in their brain. If they know that they're looking for a certain target number, they're going to think number-wise. What am I adding together? What do I have to target? If it's just to number when they're rolling that die and seeing the result, they don't know if they're doing really good or really bad. It could be really easy and they're like, oh no, I rolled really low. And they're like, oh, I still succeeded. You see the difference here before you're like, oh no, I've automatically lost, you know. They still have a little bit of hope in there and they don't just automatically think based around those numbers. They think about more around based around the various actions they are taking. This can of course lead to GM cheating, which we're going to talk about next time. So that's it for today. I talked about some more aspects that you're going to have to look into when you're game mastering. Knowing your materials, knowing your rules, knowing I also talked about how your attitudes, your descriptions, the ways that you're establishing things are going to be important to setting things up. Your knowledge of the rules and your ability to improvise on the fly, along with, of course, hiding dice rolls, and of course, not telling people DCs. Things like this that are little hints at creating an immersive world and bringing your characters in immersively. In the next episode, I'm going to talk about cheating as a GM, ending sessions, and of course, building adventures. But regardless, if you have any questions, comments, anything to say, anything you think is left out, please leave in the comments below. Please like, share, and subscribe. It shows support the channel, the Empire, the work I do. If you want to show some extra support, you can always check out my Patreon. Link in the description below. But regardless, until the next time, I bid you farewell.